like ate really quick and later on you need a snack, we've got some granola bars, some fruit, there's some mints, some chips. So if at some point later on you need a little fuel to keep you going, the cart of goodies is over here. So please make sure you help yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did a lot of talk about early in the morning, and as promised, we're gonna kind of solidify some of that and then move on to our unit 1, and talk a little bit more about that and all the amazing materials that you have in your classroom and how to get those set up for success. Is there anyone that would be willing to sort of capture what they feel they got from this morning is the process for leveling a student with the IRLA? And I know we mostly talked about K2, so I'm gonna show you on there a little bit more about 3rd and 4th grade, just to talk a little bit more about that before we move on. But if I were to say there's 3 steps if you were to level somebody at K2, is anyone that can name those 3 steps?
I don't know about 3, word recognition, vocabulary, and then I guess reading comprehension.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So we're first going to be looking at words, right? So they're going to have a screener, and that's going to be that page in the beginning if you flagged it. That's the phonics infrastructure. So they're going to, and remember in your IRLA you have the process for the steps that you're going to take. So let me actually pull it up for visuals. But I changed my mind. So when we look at this page. So when you're looking at this page, which I believe is Roman numeral 10, it's going to give you the initial levels for 1 green and up. And it says that because we know the yellow books follow, you just grab a yellow book and you see what the student can do with yellow. That's going to be the page prior that can walk you through that. But that, again, unless you're a kindergarten teacher, that should not be the majority of your students. So you're going to start with the phonics and or vocabulary. You're only going to the vocabulary if they've completed everything on the phonics page. If they haven't, you don't even touch the vocabulary. So students will read across the rows and the directions are there. And when you do get access to School Pace or even the demo that I showed you today, there is a resource center and it has these leveling videos on it. So if you want to, or you can even go on YouTube and put IRLA leveling. There are leveling videos on there if you want to watch it. The downfall to the levels, sometimes, or leveling, it doesn't sometimes show everything. Like when we were watching Carlos read the book, that Dr. Seuss book, it went right into the reading. It didn't show the phonics. So that's the only downfall to it, but you can see the process. The best way for you to level is pick the nicest kid and level that kid first. Don't pick the mean kid. Pick a kid that's going to be comfortable and nice, and if they're younger, maybe not the most squirrely one, and just try it out. And when they're older kids, I always said, like, I'm practicing how to do this right now, so would you help me, help me with this process? So that, you might take some time, but it'll all become second nature. You might decide, I know she said I can have my School Pace open and do this, but I'm not ready for that yet. So you might decide that you're gonna write it down and put it in. That's okay, I did the same thing. I'm just gonna say, don't eventually try to move away from that because you're giving yourself double work, but right now you're probably not gonna feel that quick, so you might wanna take it and just kind of jot it down. So when we look through there, I can show you where you might be able to take notes, or you just write it on a notebook piece of paper. So the phonics and the vocabulary infrastructure, one you're reading across rows and down. The vocabulary page, we're looking for 5 synonyms or definitions. They're not reading down or across anything on the vocabulary page. This is only to see what cold read. You call it a cold read because it's supposed to be the first time that they've seen it. It shouldn't be something they recognize. So then we move to the cold read, and we ask the student those comprehension/inference questions, and we rate them and see, do they meet the minimum requirement can stay at this level. This is where it breaks off. So if you are 1 green to 2 red, which is middle-ish kindergarten to the end of 2nd grade, then we are going to need to check some foundational skills. And that will probably be a list or 2 that you want to see. Not only does the student have enough to be successful at this level, but I'm also going to use this information to figure out what their power goal is going to be. Because whatever they have left here is going to be the most important thing that they're going to need at this level. Comprehension does not go by the wayside because they couldn't get into this level without showing the comprehension first. And they are going to be able to talk about and enjoy and comprehend their books. I just know this is the explicit instruction I have to give them, is whatever it's going to show me here. And this, you can remember, you can store this on SchoolPace. You'll be able to click the words and save it. So that's something that when I come in September, we'll be able to, revisit that piece. I added a page. Then, if I'm a white level or above, which we didn't spend as much time on today, I don't have any of these lists. So what am I going to be asked to do if I'm 3rd grade or above? And I will tell you that 3rd grade is like that middle ground where I just came out of phonics land and now I'm moving into chapter book. So there's a little bit of purgatory there, if you will. There's a little bit of in between. I might still need a little bit of support. I might have come over to you with like a little bit of phonics needs, or I might be a white level, reading at a white level, and I'm almost out the door and ready to move to the black level. So there is a little bit of work at the 3rd grade level because it's such a transitional level. So it's gonna be a little different only because there might be some other areas. So I'm just gonna show you that on SchoolPace and what I mean by that. But 4th grade and 4th grade to 6th grade, what you can expect is that after you've done the cold read, you're going to want to see how do they do with an informational text, and that's why I choose informational cold reads, so that I can do that in 1 reading. And then you want to go and send them to the bin and have them select a chapter book and set up those parameters so that you can check in with them in like a week or 2. That doesn't mean you need to wait to give them the level, because we do want to come to a basis where we say, when do we think we can get all of the students' levels into SchoolPace so that we can start to, track and support students. In year 1, you start August 22nd. In year 1, that might be end of September, 1st week of October. But by the time you get to that point, you already have an idea of what their power goal could be. So you could give them a level and their goal pretty much at the same time. What you might not be able to do for the 3rd grade and above is like, you're waiting for this kid to finish this book. I need to confirm this level. You can give them the level and meet that deadline. You just know that if they can't do it, and let's say you put them at a 4th or 5th grade level, and you're like, all right, I'm seeing that you're struggling here, that you're gonna make that decision, and I could be your thinking partner around like, what should we do? You're gonna have some outlier students that you have questions about, and that's, in the process of like figuring it out and working with any, bouncing ideas off anyone in this room to try to figure out what would be the best next steps for that student. All right, so with that, I do want to just show you those 2 pieces, and then I'm going to show you the architecture, which is how is the ERLA organized, and then we're gonna leave ERLA land. So what I just mentioned to you, 4th grade and above. When I am leveling a student, I am going to, and again, you don't have to memorize any of this. Man, I did not reset my hotspot up. I'm gonna talk and do, because I'm gonna multitask, because again, any teacher, former or otherwise, knows how to multitask. So if you remember, I walked you through the green level, and I said, remember with Olivia, how she did the reading, and I showed you how you can click the words as she's reading them on SchoolPace. You might not know how to get there, because I just showed it to you really quickly, but if you just remember the concept of, I can click the words that she miscues, and it will save them for me, and then when I go to the list of words, the power words, I can click those as well. So I just wanna remind you that we don't need to do any of those things for third grade and above because it's not necessary to that level. So what you shouldn't expect is that when you're leveling on here, you're not going to be clicking miscues for students reading at third grade or above, because they shouldn't need that. Doesn't mean they're gonna be perfect in everything that they read, but if phonics and decoding is not their focus, then we shouldn't be, then we're not going to be using our time there. So, as I get back into
What
school.
happens if they're way below their level though?
If they're way below their level, when you go into that level, it is going to ask for those things. So if my student is a third grader reading at the second grade level, I am clicking because he's at a decoding level. But if my student, regardless of the grade, is at a third grade or higher, I'm not clicking on miscues because it's not gonna offer me that at those levels. So, let me just hop in here, back in, I had it all set up, but now it's making me go back in. All right, so I'm in my classroom. I'm gonna open up the ERLA. The student was leveled at a 2 blue, so that's why it opened here, but I'm just for the sake of learning, I'm gonna go to what I was talking about. So at any green or blue or red levels, those phonics levels, when you go into the entry requirements, which is the only place you're gonna live in the first 6 weeks of school, you're going to see that you have your cold reads here, and yes, when I click on them, there's gonna be a start cold read, and I can start clicking the miscues. That's only gonna be for those K2 levels. I don't need to worry about that with the yellow books, right? And then when I go down, it's going to be, okay, these are the areas I wanna check. I wanna know what their letter names and sounds, and I wanna know how many power words they know. And from there, I'm gonna determine my plan of what their power goal is going to be and how I can work on that. Now, if I'm a K1 teacher, these might be centers. I might have centers around letter names and sounds. I might have centers around high frequency words. So technically, my students are all gonna be practicing this all the time. Whereas second grade and above, they're gonna have silent reading and they're gonna have their own individualized power goals because the broad range of where they might be at is, you're gonna have more and more colors of the ERLA rainbow in your classroom. The goal is in a few years though, 4th and 5th grade teachers, you're gonna see a lot less colors of the rainbow of ERLA in your classrooms because students are gonna start following this staircase and they will come to you more prepared in the literacy phonics arena anyways. So this is what I would expect. Now if I want to give the student the level, all I do is click ready for 1 green. That's all I do. And then that becomes the student's level. And it all lives in entry requirements. You don't have to remember this, I'll remind you in September. But if anyone is wanting to get ahead of the game and wants to start to try it out. So I go in, I do the reading, I figure out, okay, these are the lists I need to work on. They're both high leverage, so I should definitely check those with the student. And then from there, I can decide, they know most of their letter names and sounds, and I'm gonna start to work on specific with the student around their high frequency words. And I mark that down. Either one I pick here is a high leverage goal. Now, here's 2 blue. Actually, you know what, I'll jump to 2nd grade. So here's 2nd grade. I go into entry requirements. I have my cold reads. We're still gonna be checking for miscues. And I have 1 list here, a 2 red phonics check. So I would just open that up in the ERLA. The student would read that. And then I would have the student read these words. Notice that you probably can't see it as well here, but this is a category. The category is for me as the teacher, not for the student. So I'm gonna have them read these words, these words, these words. And what I'm looking for is, they should know 20 of these. That would be a good safe space. If they know 19, 18, make your best decision. If they know all of them and they're reading below grade level, you might consider trying a level up because you don't have any high leverage goals to teach them here. So knowing all of these might be your indication that maybe you level them too low. And let's say you're like, all right, I'm gonna try the next level, and they struggle a little bit. Now you're in a spot to make a decision. They don't need 2 red foundational skills. They can't get into the white level. That's chapter books. What do I do? And that's where getting to know the Earl more will help you, because then you'll say, there are smaller chapter books in 2 red. So what if I start there with the student and then move them into white when they're ready? But I'm not going to, even though it says it's high leverage, the student shows me they don't need this anymore. So I need to work on what is the next move I need to make to get them into the white level. But just like the other ones, I can click. And what if they can't read them all? I'm gonna say, okay, which categories here did the student get a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5? Well, these aren't the types of decoding needs that they have then. Let's say, for example, they said etcho or aincher, or they don't know their TION words. Well, now I have explicit types of words that the student's struggling with. And when I go into my toolkits, which we're gonna talk about at a later professional development, when I go into the table of contents for this level, I can expect that it's gonna have lessons with texts, with a small group of like 6 texts. So I can teach one-on-one or in small group for students that need these specific skills. So there will be lessons there for that. So what you can expect from K2 levels is that the lists that you do need to check on, not only are there Power Goal, but also it's tied to the toolkit lessons of what you're gonna find here. You're gonna be able to deliver that instruction in the toolkits. So it's not to say that if you level at 1 blue, let me pull out the toolkit and you're gonna do lessons 1 through 30. You're gonna just do the lessons that you need. And if I already have a lesson or a way to teach this, I'm gonna teach with my resource. But if I don't, this is a resource I could use to teach it. So that will be how this will work. But again, we're getting ahead, because all you really need to know is you're gonna try out leveling your student. You could watch videos. You could, if you team up and level a student together the first time, that's always an option as well. And when I come in September, like I said, if you want me to check a level of a student, or you want to see me do it in person, those are all, opportunities that we'll have in a few weeks.
So is that kind of our goal between the beginning of school and then when you come, is to have our kids, give them this word list and
What
kind of
week is
figure
that?
out?
You start the 22nd. Is that like week 3?
Through 16th. That's probably our PD.
Oh, I'm coming in the 16th?
I don't know when you're
Oh,
coming. That's the first
sorry, I'm
Saturday
coming the 7th, right?
Yes.
Okay.
of October.
So the unit 1 your unit 1 is also gonna guide you on when to level your students. So it's gonna say end of week 2, beginning of week 3, start to level. So I would say by the time I come, dabble in it and try it out, and then see how you feel, because you'll have a lot more questions if you try it out. And don't worry about doing it wrong. There's no such thing. So I would definitely say it's not about leveling all your kids by then, but see who you can level and decide how you wanna go about it. Again, do you wanna give everybody the screener first and then jot down where they're at? And then give everybody the reading and then that second piece? So like, okay, now we're gonna do the reading and then we're gonna go into those power words and read them. You could think about how you wanna set that up. Whatever, it's really your preference. And maybe it's not gonna be the same for every student, because you're not gonna have students that can sit through the whole thing.
Yeah, if you're not coming till October, I thought you were coming September.
No, I am, September.
She is, we'll be in our room.
September 7th.
I think she's.
But we won't have training.
With kids. Like, it's not
Coming in
gonna
our
be a
room.
separate
Oh,
room.
yeah,
And
yeah,
your
sorry,
rooms
I should have
will
prefaced
be
that.
sessions.
So this will be our only sort of like workshop style, where like I'm doing exactly the opposite of what we promote to do in class, is like students do most of the talking. So I'm not practicing what we preach, but it will be, we'll set up a schedule where I can come in for certain segments of time into each classroom. There's a lot of ways we could do it. We could also, if there's a grade level time that you meet and we pull students in and do more of like a fishbowl. So we have a lot of different options. But the idea would be that this is the last time that we do it in a PowerPoint manner, and it's more embedded. We could even plan lessons together, we can co-facilitate lessons together, so there's a lot that can happen, over the next visit. But the biggest piece next time will for sure be that you feel comfortable leveling, and that you've had somebody to bounce the practice off of. Okay, so I wanted to show you what it looks like in orange, which is 5th grade, just so you can see the difference. So first of all, notice there's no foundational skills. Instead, there's range of reading and vocabulary and language. And yes, you're gonna see literature and informational, and you're gonna crosswalk for Missouri standards, but I'm sure Missouri standards have literature and informational. So that's going to be grade level instruction. You're gonna cover informational and literature standards in grade level instruction, and it doesn't mean students at this level can't work on that. But if I were to look at what is high leverage, I can click into these areas. So for example, range of reading, I can see that these are all possible power goals, but if your power goal is home reading and engagement all year, you're not gonna grow. I'd love to get you engaged, and I can give you a chapter book habit, but you should have had that in 3rd grade. But I know that in order to move you and get you ready for 6th grade level, the high leverage goals of this level is going to be genres. And notice it matches the learning focus. The learning focus says genres on the front page of this level. But when I look at the entry requirements, how are the entry requirements different? We're still gonna do a cold read. One difference is not all of them are available here because of digital rights, and they're not our books. So we can't even put an excerpt of all of those books, but that's okay. You have a couple options here. Do you want to choose one that's available here? If I click Bud Not Buddy, I can rate you just like I could with all the others. I am not able to click on that. If I click on this, it's just gonna give me the PDF. It's not going to give me, I'm not gonna click on any miscues. But I can rate you here a 0 out of 4 for your 3 questions. Well, what if I don't wanna use these 2 texts? What if the student picked the other text and it's not here and I wanna use it? That's okay, just go in the evidence box here and type comprehension 4, vocabulary 3, inferencing 2, total of blank, again, I'm not a math person, and you'll see that 3rd grade and above is 9 or more. So you would just gauge it from there. You don't have to be tied to what's available here, especially because you're not doing a miscue analysis. Then, when I go down here, I might be like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do all this to level my student? Demonstrate the ability to finish a chapter book. Well, I'm just gonna make that your very first goal. That's what you're gonna do when you leave here. You're gonna pick a book and we're gonna set up the parameters for the chapter book that you're gonna finish, because I need to make sure, yeah, you did the short reading, what can you do with a chapter book? Because that's what you're gonna be doing this year. Demonstrate the ability to comprehend an informational text. Again, I chose the cold read, so I can just click, yes, they were able to do that. And then demonstrate the ability to read in a new genre. That's gonna be a goal that you move into the color level with. And then this is always my favorite one. Like, are you checking them for 3,000 words? No, you're not. You do not need to do anything here, because when you did the vocabulary page, the vocabulary screener, you already checked you already got a check for them of their vocabulary. So people say, well, why is this vocabulary here then? This is for if you had a student in the black level and now they're moving to orange. Now you can check to make sure, and I'll show you what it looks like. It looks just kind of like the screener, except instead it's a bunch of columns of orange level. So I can choose any column, can I define 5 words? So just to not overwhelm you and confuse you all, basically what I'm saying is if you're 4th grade and above, reading level, you're gonna do the cold read. I'm gonna do an informational cold read, and then I want you to read a chapter book and finish it. I don't need to do that vocabulary because the vocabulary was done when I did the screener. So I don't have to do it twice. And then I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna click you're ready for orange, because I'm gonna wait and see about your chapter book, but I'm also trying to get your level in at a certain time, and this is my best guess of where you are. And your range of reading and your reading habits is gonna play a role, but this is where I'm seeing that you're at. All right, I'm gonna stop there for these pieces. What I'll leave you with as far as like, what can I do to better prepare myself over from now until, I wouldn't even say the 22nd, because you're not gonna just jump in and level them. Again, you'll have a week or two to get to know your students and set up the reading process. What we don't wanna do is turn our backs on the kids and start leveling, and then they're running amok. They have to really understand what are the rules and procedures of silent reading, and not going to the bathroom and sharpening our pencils, and we're not book shopping. We should have our books ready because we're reading. So if your book is already if you have 4 pages left, you should have a book ready before independent reading starts. And so getting that established, and I'm speaking from experience that if it isn't established, like your conferences and the rest of the year, it's not as effective because the kids they didn't establish that important piece of the silent reading time. So when you look at, that could be one thing, is just to look at the videos of leveling on YouTube. And then the other piece would be read your ERLA. So every time that you look at any level in here, you're gonna see that the first page is always that learning focus that we talked about. Up in the top right corner, you'll see what the grade level equivalency is. So you can see this is 2nd grade to the middle of 2nd grade. Yeah, so we have that there. Then, on the next page, you should see that this matches school pace. They have to do a cold read, and then these are the lists of words that you want to check for the student. So it's going to give you that snapshot in your physical copy. And then on the next page, you're going to have your cold read record. So I heard someone laugh like, that's going to be me, like I'm not going to be on school pace when I'm leveling. This would be doesn't mean you have to print this, but this would be what you want to sort of frame your thinking around when you're listening to the student do the cold read. Because you can jot down any miscues here. Later you can see if there's a category you could put it in. And then you could write the response if you choose to, but then you can score them. So this would be, again, you could take this information and put it right onto school pace, or you could just use it from school pace and not even touch the paper copy. But that's always gonna be the next page in any color level that you have in school pace, in your ERLA, except the yellow level. The yellow level is the only one that doesn't follow like the major protocol. And then the next pages to come are always gonna be the cold read choices. They're always gonna have the questions right in the bottom left corner. And then if it is a K2 level, the next thing to come will be the lists, which are also available on school pace. And then after that, you're going to get your standards, which again, with a grain of salt because it's gonna be different. And then the last page you'll see is how do I transition to the next level? And the transition to the next level is the same thing as the entry of the next level. So after 2 red is the white level. So transition to 2 red is the entry requirements for the white level, if that makes sense. They're the same thing. So you just choose which one you'd rather look at, but I get an idea of where you need to go to get into the next level. So if I have a student that I think is ready, I'm gonna keep them in this level, and I'm gonna give them a power goal at the next level and try to move them into the next level. And that is where we're at with the ERLA. So before I move to the next, I just wanted to see if you have any questions around the ERLA or the leveling, and then again, knowing that I will, be back. Yes?
Okay, so earlier you mentioned that if we were like, more than one teacher was incorporated in this process, like if you're departmentalized or sped or something like that, that you designate or you have one person who goes in and does all your leveling, your changing, whatever that you're talking about. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. So if that's the case, we all do a round of reading. So does that, and then she does social studies, which she will be doing the conferencing. So does she do the conferencing and the changing, or do we all do our homeroom at reading?
So you could all, what I would recommend is when you are with students, now, would it be the same classroom, or would you have a mixture of classrooms? You don't necessarily, it's not the same group of
We
kids.
start with our homeroom in the morning at reading.
It
and
is the
then they
same group of kids,
rotate.
though?
It's the same group though, they just rotate.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you could essentially go into a particular classroom and all of the kids will be the same group that
Yes.
you have at that time. That works nicely. So what you would do then is, let's say it was one of the other teachers' classrooms. So you're just gonna click into that classroom, and then you're gonna have some things on the side here, which again, you're not gonna need to worry about so much right now, but I just wanted you to see. I can click on this ERLA organizer, and I have all of my kids. Here's their level. Here was the last time something was put into school pace. This, not so bad. This would be really bad. 335 days. And then here's what their power goal is. And then here's the last thing that somebody wrote about them. So you would see what was the last thing. You could even communicate with each other this way. Like you might say, I is ready to assess at the next level. And somebody else can take the baton then and do
Okay.
that. But what you would all be doing is, if this student's power goal is decoding 2-syllable words, then right from this page, you can click it and it goes right into the student's ERLA where that star was marked, and then you can type your evidence in. So notice it was just somebody messing around because it's a demo. August 2nd, Maria put this in. I would see what the last thing she wrote about this, and now I'm gonna type my information about what I noticed and save it, and then mine will be there. So it's, we should, if we're not going to the power goal, you know, we shouldn't be kind of like going to all these different areas.
Right.
Again, who's ever doing the grade level instruction will be covering the other standards. If we think that we need to go somewhere else, then this isn't their power goal. So once this is done, all to what you were saying, if you decide the student doesn't need two-syllable decoding, you just want to let all the other teachers that work with the student know and say, hey, I'm gonna move his power goal because he showed me this, and you know, I'm gonna move it to this, so that they're not like surprised when they open up school pace and they have their lesson ready and they're like, this isn't your power goal anymore. That's the only thing, is like just being communicative about moving levels and power goals. But once the student has one, if we are all working towards that, they should actually move through it really quickly if they have all these teachers helping them. Now you might say, I'm gonna work on their power goal, you're gonna do more of like a literary circle and work with them and talk about books. That's okay too. We just don't want the student working on 2-syllable words, anti-frequency words, and you know, letter names and sounds, because then they're all over. They should have one goal and then move to the next goal. If that, hopefully that cleared up some of it, but this is where you'll be able to kind of see those pieces and then decide. So whatever you can do here to be more helpful for each other, which is always like, what did I observe? What did I tell the student to do next? Because then that's helpful for another adult. Just saying like red, you know, red flag I can't do anything with that. So that's where it'll come into like what's good evidence for me to put in that will help my counterparts.
Everyone should have access to the demo now. Just leave off the www and go to the site.
Okay, and I'll definitely give you, yeah.
That's what tech is telling us, so just arcid.com should get you in to the demo now. And the Padlet, everything should be unlocked, they said.
What are we supposed to type in?
Just the whole address she gave without the.
Yeah, I'll put that one up. I'm gonna talk a little bit about, or I'm gonna move into the unit now just for time, but I'll make sure you have the demo information. And actually, I'll put it right on the Padlet. I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place. So I'll put all the demo information on the Padlet so that you can go in there and check it out. And just kind of like any online platform, just kind of play around in there and see what's there. So we're gonna pivot to the units and the grade level time. And so something that I just want to point out is that for K and 1, you are gonna see different areas. Kindergarten and first grade is pretty much identical, except kindergarten has a science lab. And what I will say is there's not something like laid out as far as a science lab. and you really won't need to think about that in Unit 1. But in Units 2, 3, and 4, when you're focused on animals, when you're focused in Unit 4 on entomology, on bugs, you might decide to have a center or a space in your room where they can look at different types of bugs. Or you might decide in Unit 4 that you're going to have butterflies in your classroom that students are going to be able to sketch and look at. So that's what we mean when we say science lab, is the fact that it's science focused in kindergarten in 2, 3, and 4. How can I incorporate that into my classroom? And you'll have some suggestions, but it's not gonna be lessons or anything like that, nor do you need that. It's more exploratory. What you will see in K1 is that one of the most important and effective parts of your literacy block is going to be morning meeting. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's not going to be, hey kids, today we're going to go to the gym. It's you can do those things, but the morning message, there's gonna be a template for it, is going to be a way that every day you're gonna be able to write with students, talk about how we end with periods. You're going to tell them what you're learning today and how it connects from yesterday. And you're gonna share the pen so they can come up and circle letter sounds and circle high frequency words. And we do have some videos on it to show modeling of that. And it's also a part of the coaching if you wanna see, a coach do a morning message and like visit 3 and beyond. Or help you plan one and deliver it. So it is a way that every day you can see students' goals in action. Because I'm gonna know that, Susie's working on her letter sounds, I'm gonna have her come up. I know that, Billy's working on his power words, I'm gonna ask Billy if he can identify and circle any power words that he sees in the morning message. So that's gonna be K1 and even recommended for 2nd grade as well, to start the day that way. And then there's always a read aloud, there is a reading lab, and there is writing. You're going to have the lessons there. What's not gonna be spelled out, nor should it be, is what your centers need to be, because you probably already have centers that are up that you utilize, but you will have materials with the toolkit lessons. And K1 has a lot of manipulatives that you could use in literacy-based centers. So power word games, different matching cards for pictures and letter sounds. So you'll be able to use those. I often tell K1 teachers to get into your toolkit sooner, because you would use them in centers. Whereas 2nd grade and above will not need to use their toolkits, which we don't have here right now, because you still need to want to level your students, figure out their power goal, figure out what group they should be in. So you're not going to get there right away, because you're gonna use toolkits during differentiated time, whereas K1 might be using them right away in their centers. Another piece to note is that there says phonological awareness, and although you will have embedded phonics lessons, the phonics is embedded in morning message. Phonics practice is embedded in writing. It's embedded in the music and drama. So there will be a through line of phonics. It's not just this one isolated moment, but you will have that as well, and that will be grade level. So as you get into 2nd grade with that grade level phonics, you're gonna have kids in K1. So even though everybody gets this, you'll be able to do the differentiated piece with them with the toolkits. Now, if I move on to 3rd grade and above, a great question had come up, just a reminder that the reading complex text, that's the grade level time. So that's when you all have a core text. So let's say it's 5th grade and we're reading My Teacher is an Alien. Well, that doesn't mean the students are reading the text. It means the teacher is reading the text to the students, and they might reread a portion of it that day. You might say, go back to chapter 1, I want you to look at the setting and talk with your partner. They might be doing that kind of work, but we're not having them read chapter 3 and 4 on your own. Because we know that, you'll know where your kids are at, and who can do that and who can't. But this is the time for them to hear a fluent reader, and how I read, and I use emphasis in all of those pieces. And then they go into reading on their own with their own text. So the core text is for you to read. And I did that in middle school and had to read the same book like 5 times in a row, and then I had a very hoarse voice. But you know, you could do a recording. They usually like the teacher more. But what you want to avoid is popcorn reading and things like that, because again, it's supposed to be a fluent, on or above grade level reader. And then you have your stopping points, right? Your purposeful stopping points that you're using in the text. So that's another reason. They are gonna read their own text here, and then they're gonna write. So the reading and writing do go hand in hand. This piece here though, reading my own text and working on my power goal, that can happen at any time in the day that makes sense. The goal is 30 minutes if it's 2nd grade or above. The goal might still be 30 minutes in K1, it just might be a whole bunch of 5-minute increments. But eventually we're trying to get them to, maybe we can get them up to 10 minutes 3 times a day. I might be partner reading or elbow reading or reading to a stuffed animal, but they'll have opportunities in K1. So I just wanted to remind you, as you think about how could this work in my block, that second reading time can happen anywhere, whereas as much as you can keep these 3 pieces together, because it's all gonna be connected. I do, we do, you know, you do. So this way they're not forgetting what you did, so that they can replicate that process. So my goal here is to walk through and show you 1st grade and a 3rd grade, because 1st grade is gonna connect closely with kinder, and 3rd grade is gonna connect closely with the 3-5, just to get the structure, and then I'm gonna let you have time to look through and start to think about and plan for week 1. And you know, obviously I'll be here to be a thinking partner with you through it. I just wanna get you kind of the basics here. So the first thing that you're gonna see is everybody will have a pacing guide. And that will be the page that you'll want to flag and see first. It looks something like this. And I'm gonna turn on the light.
You guys find it.
What book is this in?
Oh, sorry, the one that's colored by your grade level. So not the ERLA, but the one with the lessons.
Oh, because there's 2 different. It's sorry, before one.
Should be in the introduction tab. Okay, so this is your scope of what does the whole unit look like. First thing you'll notice is it's 6 weeks, but you have 9 weeks to do this, and you'll want more than 6 weeks. Because what you want to ensure is that before you leave this unit, you've had time to see what students are able to do at various skills. You've definitely had time to level students, get them into groups, let them know they're powerful and how to practice them, and you've done a rotation at least of that. Because when you go into Unit 2, at the 1st grade and above, you move into a thematic unit with research, and you wanna make sure that you have this solid. Because what Unit 1 is really paving the way for the literacy block for the rest of the year. So you don't wanna rush through this piece. And another reminder again is that you're not teaching to mastery. And the reason I say that is because you're like, we did main idea in detail today and now we're switching to something else tomorrow. Why are they doing that? And it's, again, you're just getting a check of what they're able to do, because you will have time in units 2 through 4 to spend more time. But note where students are struggling specifically, or whole group, because that's gonna help you with the units to come. So you can think about how to expand and contract, and when you look at the focus, you could probably determine where you might need to spend more time, so you don't have to feel rushed. So if I'm looking at the 3rd grade one here, the first column gives me the the focus, right? So reading for meaning, academic vocabulary, why series matter, word parts. So I can see that the first phase is fact and fiction, initiating an academic community, which is that white line, yellow line. Phase 2 is fact and fiction, but I'm thinking about initial assessment and goal setting. So determining your ERLA levels and setting goals with you. And then phase 3 is writing fact and fiction. And now we're in strategic instruction, which means that my groups are up and running now. So you can see in weeks 5 and 6, writing fiction narratives, writing informational texts. So those are your 2 writing goals that you're working towards. But you're gonna have some opportunities throughout to build on that. And then it shows you what the mini lessons that you find in the text will cover, what students should be able to do by the end of the week. So if I know that I want students to be able to use context clues to determine meanings of the words, what will be my exit slips? What will be my way of assessing them by the end of the week? That they're able to do that, not to mastery, but who can do it, who needs more support, because this is a big part of 3rd grade. The other bucket here is reading culture. So week 1, we're initiating a reading community. Week 2, we're trying to sustain 30 minutes of reading. I might have a timer on and say, as soon as we're gonna try to be silent, and what does the engaged reader look like? And when I see somebody off task, I'll stop the timer. All right, we made it to 18 minutes today. Let's try to beat that tomorrow. So we're trying to get to that 30-minute mark and show students that, you know, we're not gonna be like, you were the one that ruined it for us, but we will stop the timer. Somebody was off, you know? It depends on the student. Maybe you wanna do that, I don't know. But then it's like, it's a collective thing, right? We can't be off task on that. Then we have our launching 100 book challenge, which just basically means that we are, you know, working through students self-selecting texts and working on their goals. This is where you will decide when it says on target for in-school reading, on target for home reading. That's where we're gonna decide what route we wanna take, because reading practice is part of it, and it is something you can track on school pace. So you can decide, like, we're gonna actually start sending books home in week 5, once we've talked about the importance of the books, how we take care of the books, how we bring the books back, and you've had practice filling out your reading logs in class only, and now we can start moving it to, you're gonna be taking this book and your reading log back and forth with you. You're gonna have these to hopefully keep the book safe and the reading log or a reading folder safe for them to bring back and forth. These go nice behind their chairs too. So they're independent reading book, and the reading log should go with them wherever they go. I think K1 has these, or they might have backpacks. I think they change it on me all the time. I can't keep up. But there is a way, you know, for them to keep that safe. So that's something to consider. And so that would be, you know, reading logs and reading practice. And we know 3rd grade and above is all about reading habits. So it's a great way to say, you come to your reading conference. What have you been reading? Oh, I noticed you have a new title every day. You're ditching books all the time. What's going on? Let's talk through that. Let's finish some books. So this will help you with that. And then we have writing culture. This is what you would be doing with the ERLA. So establishing the baseline reading levels by the end of week 2. Continue reading levels. Confirm levels. How do I confirm levels? The phonics lists, finishing a chapter book, things like that, to make sure, is this really the right spot for you? And now based on all of the leveling that I've done, what would be the right power goal for you? And then how can I group you? This is gonna be different with some reading programs that you might have had, because there might be a student that's not in a group because they don't have a shared power goal. So you're not grouped by level, you're grouped by like power goal, and it's gonna be a revolving door. Kids are gonna be moving in and out faster than others. So even though I might be alone, I might next week be in a group with 5 kids. It just depends on my movement, but we will support you with how to create a schedule and how to work through that in visit 2 or 3. So that's something that will be on there. And then whenever you're meeting, I know you don't have like legit PLC time, but when you do meet with a team, just so you know, at the end of every week in this framework, there is a focus to help you of what to think of next. So it'll usually be, what should I be thinking about with engagement? What should I be thinking about with ERLA levels? And then what should I be thinking about for my lesson plans for next week? So it'll give you some guidance there, and that's the last page of every week in this unit. If I look at kindergarten, that's gonna look a little different because I'm still gonna have the focus, the reading culture, what am I doing for ERLA? But now I'm also gonna have my embedded foundational skills focus. So what is the phonological awareness focus of the week? The phonics word study focus, print concepts, and then the PLC part is the same, like it was for 3rd grade. So that's where K1-2 is going to be different, is that you have embedded phonics foundational skills in your lessons. Okay, what you're going to have, your classroom library, so you're gonna want to take out these bins, fill them with the books, and then decide where is an accessible place to set these up. Maybe half of them are on this side of the room, half are on the other. Maybe you have a nice bookshelf you can put them in. And then spending the first 2 weeks having students bookshop. They're not gonna be leveled yet, so there is a lesson in week 1 that's gonna ask that the students take 1 from each basket, and they can do a self-assessment to, I think it's like circle if it's hard for you, put a triangle if it's easy, you know, so they could do that. Although of course you're gonna get kindergartners saying they can read Harry Potter, but sometimes kids are pretty on it and they know and at least it opens them up to getting to see and get excited about all the titles and books. That's another positive to it. But you'll be able to also tell them about book shopping and figure out, when do you want kids to book shop? Is it right in the morning when they come in? Is it during a snack time? Because we just don't want it to be during the 30 minutes of silent sustained reading, because students will use that as an excuse. The students who don't want to read will use that as an excuse to not read. So that's what we're trying to avoid, is like, this is our sacred time. We pick our books, we find a spot, and we read. And those are the rules of reading. And if you have to go to the bathroom, you're gonna do it before reading starts. So, and you shouldn't need to sharpen your pencil because you're not writing anything until after reading time is done. So those will be some procedures there. This is a 3rd grade sample. So I would have my library. I would have my writer's notebook. So they are gonna have a writer's notebook. And you don't have to use every page of this. This is here as a support to go along with your lessons. But you use it as you see fit. At the K2 levels, you're also gonna have a word study notebook. So whatever our phonics lessons of the day were, you're gonna have some time to practice it. And then students should get some feedback on it, so that it's not just, we wanna get away from like filling out worksheets, but we know that they do need some of that explicit practice, so you'll have that as well. 3-5 will not have the word study notebook, but you will have a writer's notebook. There is going to be a reading survey that you could print out from week 1 to just have students, when you're trying to get to know them as readers. There's that, this is the levels check sheet that students can use to self-assess while they don't have a level yet. And then you could decide to use the status of the class, which is also gonna be in week 1, so you'll see any sort of, all this is a page with squares, so that you can say, Johnny is a 1 blue, he's engaged. Billy is a 2 red, resistant. Because you're gonna put this information on school pace, but as your kid observing, you don't have to use this box of squares. You could use a regular piece of paper, you could use Post-it notes, but you're just kid watching right now. I also like to use something like this. If you do decide, I'm just gonna do the screener with everybody. Well, if I'm doing the screener with everybody when I level them, then I wanna write their name and what the screener told me, so that I can see, oh, okay, I have 5 kids that might be at a 2 red. I'm gonna actually do the 2 red reading with these kids on Tuesday. And just, I like to do it by color, so I'm not all over the place. But these are just some things, and this is a page right out of your framework. So it's gonna help you get set up. This is what you're gonna be kind of reading through. So So when we do get to the time to kind of explore this and read it, what I recommend is that you don't just look at week 1, but look at week 5 and 6. So like, what am I leading to so I can make the right moves through these weeks? If you go to week 1, so if you can find week 1 in your framework, you're gonna see, so we started with the 6 weeks. That yellow page was, what are we supposed to do in the 6 weeks that we can expand to 9, to 8 to 9? And then in week 1, you're gonna see it's broken down by week, by the 5 days of that week. This will be for, again, I'm gonna walk through a first grade one that'll be a lot more like kindergarten. So kindergarten, as you're kind of perusing yours, especially in the introduction note, it's gonna be a little different. So day 1 is why read, and it lets me know begin the novel. So on day 1, I'm gonna start reading whatever our core novel is. Day 2, ask and answer questions. Day 3, relevant details, fact versus fiction, illustrations, and then it says aim to finish your core novel before week 3. Now, you have more than 6 weeks, so you're gonna use that knowledge to say, then for me, I wanna aim to finish it before week 5. So as you're kind of sketching out what is gonna be my focus each week, when do I wanna have the core novel finished by? Really, you wanna have the core novel finished before they start their writing process, because I can't really write about or write a narrative if we haven't gone through all the lessons yet. And we're using the core text to model those pieces, to do the heavy lifting for us. So there's gonna be a lot of guidance in here for you. Now if you can turn to the first lesson in your framework. And you'll know it's the first lesson because you're gonna see this ticker at the top. It'll have day 1 lesson, it'll give you the focus. Of course, it's gonna be more standards focused, not just like why read, but we're getting kids started. And what you're gonna see is a snapshot of the whole, so if you were to back up, what page were you at, the 16? So 16 and 17, if it's the same for everyone, is really just the big picture. This is your whole lesson plan right here. You notice there's the grade level time, what organizer should I think of, what's the purpose, and then on the right hand side, here are some supports for me when I read the core text, reading lab and writing lab. And if I do an additional read aloud at some point that day, I can do it, it's gonna give me some support there. So, but then when you flip the page, you have a much more detailed lesson plan. And that's where you're gonna see the ticker at the top. So wherever it's grayed out is where you are on the page. So I can see that here would have been introduction mini lesson, 10 to 20 minutes. Let me know if anyone at 2-5 is grades 2-5 is not seeing it. But it would be week 1 and we're trying to find day 1's lesson. And wherever it's grayed out is that section. But if you look at the top, all of these areas is where you're gonna see support. So as a 2nd grade or above, or 3rd grade and above, I have my mini lesson, read, write, discuss complex text, my reading lab, my writing time, and then if I have time, it doesn't have to be consecutive, but at a different time of day, for reading lab number 2, which is crucial, because that's the time kids are gonna be practicing their power goals, not what the focus of your lesson was. And maybe I have time for a read aloud, because I will tell you that in Unit 2, when you're learning all about weather, the kids would love to have a read aloud at a separate time of day to read a story. So that's where it might not seem as necessary right now. We're trying to set up the frame for what's gonna work all year, and having a separate time for a read aloud will be crucial when you're in those thematic units. I also wanna add that you're always gonna have a paired informational text. So 5th grade teachers, you're reading My Teacher is an Alien, you're gonna have a class set of a text around UFOs and extraterrestrials. So you could also dip into some informational during that time, depending on what, you have some choice there, in other words. You'll definitely have the resources. You're also going to have, it's like, I feel like Oprah right now, you get a book. But you're also gonna have what's called hook books. And all hook books are is exactly that. It's just a basket full of books at various levels that are tried and true, kids love them. You might pick one up and make it a read aloud. Or you have a kid who just can't find any book that they like, then you pull it out. It's like, I have another basket of books. Why don't you take a look at these? So these are the only ones that you're gonna need to sticker so that you know that they're part of your hook book collection. They already have a level and they're gonna be able to go in their own hook book basket. But if you just put hook book, you can decide, we usually just put the sticker right on the front. We just not to cover up the author's name, but then you know if it gets mixed up in the other baskets, this was part of your hook book collection. You could even decide to sticker them and put them in the regular baskets, but you know it was a hook book. So how you wanna use it, well, all that we ask is that you do put the sticker on it so that however you decide to organize it, it can go back to the way that it was purchased for the teacher, whoever uses it next year. But that's just a whole another arsenal of books that you're not gonna see anything in there like pull out your hook book. It's just there for more books for students or for you to use. So those are here as well. And yeah, so that's gonna be the structure. Like I said, you have your writer's notebook and it's gonna be very specific. So read chapters 1 and 2 of Dinosaurs Before Dark. Then answer the question, what word will you use to describe Annie and why? So you are gonna get some text-dependent questions. So although it's not called out explicitly in here, you will wanna use this in conjunction with your framework to plan your day. Because if I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm gonna read the first 3 chapters and then I don't look at this, it's gonna have a disconnect. And people will say, well, why is it not specific in here? And the true reason and full transparency is that this writer's notebook came out of remote learning and COVID. We didn't have the writer's notebook. We had to make it because kids were at home and not engaged and they needed more guidance. And then it just became popular and teachers wanted it. So then it just became, okay, now you're just gonna get it. You can use it if you want to. You could take this away and still be just fine. This just makes your life easier because it's giving you questions that you might not be able to come up with it on your own the first time reading it. Next year, the year after that, you'd be fine because you've already read the book 3 times. But it will give you those pieces. So I just express for 3rd grade and above and 2nd grade when you get to that part is take a look at these and see which ones you want to answer. But what you don't want to do is say, read chapter 1 and answer the questions because not all of your students can read at this level. So after you read it, you might have them go back to chapters 1 and 2. This might be homework, but we don't want them taking the core text home. So it's most likely would be when we read, write, discuss complex text, this is gonna help you read, write, discuss complex text. It'll just give you some guidance. You're not stuck to this though. It's extra support for you if you want it and need it. Okay. Now, as we take a look at what's the difference for the word study notebook, that's gonna be kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade. Kindergarten does not have a word study notebook in unit 1 for obvious reasons, but units 2 through 4, kindergarten will have a word study notebook. And 1st and 2nd grade will have one the whole time because of where they are at in their foundational skills. And this is going to help you with reading, writing, spelling. You can use it during your morning message time. So if you want to talk to them about word families, and then they go into their section of their word notebook and they're sitting on the carpet working on with their word study notebook, that's definitely a way that it's promoted in kindergarten and 1st grade. And in 2nd grade, it'll be aligned. So, and it'll be aligned for all of these. So if week 4, day 1 is talking about the am word family, then you can expect when you go into your word study notebook, that's where the practice pieces are gonna be for you. And it's going to align with what they need to know at that level in one blue. So, so they're learning the grade level, but we know we might have students in yellow and green that will then get their extra support later. Okay, so I'm gonna walk through this with kindergarten, 1st grade, so that you can see that. So if you are second grade and above, you can ignore me for this and be looking through, and then we're gonna give you some time to take a look at the information and stop listening to my voice. So, I'm gonna just show first grade how theirs may be different and the same. So, first grade, you're gonna get a framework, you're gonna have a read aloud collection instead of a core text that all students have a copy of. You will have suggested read alouds in kindergarten and first grade. So it'll say, this is the suggested text, but you are also a college graduate educator who can choose your own text and ask these questions. So the support is there if you need it, but you can read the books out of order, or if your kids love Pete the Cat and that's your favorite book to start the day with, no one's stopping you from doing that. Obviously for K1, they're reading above grade level books, because if we always read yellow pattern books, nobody would become an engaged reader. So these are gonna be above grade level. That doesn't mean that sometimes I can't pull out a yellow book with my kindergarten and help all of them practice patterns, but I have this engaging, read aloud collection as well. The writer's notebook, it's not gonna look the same as the one you saw for third grade. It's really just going to be helping them with, drawing pictures and starting the writing process. But then the word study notebook will eventually, for kindergartners, start with the letter formations. You're still gonna have school pace, you're still gonna have the URLA, just like we all do, the bag, so that answered my question for the younger kids. And you're gonna have your basket of books. I didn't talk about these skills cards, but they're gonna help you with the levels. So if the URLA is overwhelming you, know that you have those skills cards, and all they are is cheat sheets. Now you have a laminated copy in your backpack, and that's going to be like a Cliff Notes version of every level. So you're gonna see what you would practice with students at each level, and you'll have cardstock, like 30 of each level, that you could give to students as a consumable. And so you can write their name on it and then put a star next to what their power goal is, and that's something they can keep in their reading folder. It's also great to share with parents during back to school or parent-teacher conferences to say, this is what your child is working on. And I'm gonna mark the areas that we're specifically working on, because for some parents, it's overwhelming to see the skills card depending on what their educational background is or their experience. So you would just wanna highlight certain areas for them. But that is there as well to use. Don't worry about running out of them, because you can go on to School Pace and print these out too. So it's okay to use. I was a hoarder as a teacher, so very unsharing with my resources. So I just wanted to mention that. And then you will have these toolkits that I keep mentioning that will help teach those lessons. What you're going to see for K1 is morning meeting and foundational skills is going to be part of your lesson. Interactive read aloud, reading lab, writing, and music and drama. And you're not going to see science lab, you're not going to see centers, because that's going to be, that's going to be under your discretion of how that works. But again, you're going to have more than enough resources to be able to do some literacy-based play-based centers. The only other piece that I wanted to mention for K1 is when you look on the right, there is a lot of information on the right-hand side, actually for every grade level, that's really helpful. So when you're taking it and planning, really take a look at the pieces in the gray, because they will give you the extra support. So as a K1 teacher, actually K1-2, I'm gonna see that the phonological awareness focus is onset and rhyme. And the phonics word study is at and am. So any words that have at in it, like Matt and Pat, and am in it. So it's going to help me start to write a morning message, but I also want to start to incorporate some of these words in there to have students practice. And I'm gonna expect that in the word study notebook, that's where these practice pieces are gonna live. Also, what you can expect is whatever the foundational skills phonics focus is, for your morning meeting will also be pulled into writing. So if I'm practicing at words and switching out letters to make new words, then I want students to be able to apply that in their writing as well. So that's going to be here for you to look through. And here is just a sample of what the word study notebook would look like. So if I'm doing am and apt words is my focus, here's what the word study notebook would be for students to practice. And we do encourage all students to practice this, but if you know that you have students at the yellow and green levels, you might decide to pull them over to the carpet and work with them through this with a smaller board, while your students at this level or higher could be working independently.
I have a question. I actually do know. When we're doing, like, you said at the top, like, third grade, they have the time. I noticed ours doesn't have the time, so do we find like the suggested amount of time somewhere?
Yeah, I so appreciate you bringing that up, because I always forget that piece. So the reason K1 doesn't have it is, first of all, knowing that, you know, your center time might be different, and some might choose to do their science lab or even their reading during a center, and some might make them separate. It's not bad to have reading as a center, except that it's nice for students to kind of see we're all reading at the same time, we're all finding a comfy spot to sit. But another reason is it's largely based on engagement. So my morning, if we say how long should the morning message be, we could give you some suggestions, like around 20 minutes. But if students are disengaged by 5 minutes, we suggest moving on. But we know that we want to emphasize. So everything that is actually promoted here, the morning meeting, the read aloud, the reading aloud, the writing, is what would be emphasized, to say, this is where that 15 to 20 minutes of time will come in, and that you're gonna build on it, because students are gonna get better and better at K1 sitting still and being engaged and paying attention. But I could safely say that if you were to give 15 to 20 minutes for morning message, that should be a comfortable time to say, I'm not rushing through it. This is a real, you can get a lot of bang for your buck during that time. And then it usually connects with the read aloud. So you can decide, like, I read through this book and the kids want more, I'm gonna read another book with them, and you can make that decision. Or it's just a bad day altogether, and you're like, you know what, we're gonna actually stop and we're gonna move into our centers right now. So it's to offer K1 teachers the understanding of that age group and the flexibility of we can't be tied to times, but we're gonna try to build on the foundational times as much as we can. But if you were to give it like 15 to 20 minutes for each section, that could be safe. In regards, and writing, I would say it's probably gonna be the shortest to begin with. But that also, again, if you decide to put those into a center, my biggest advice to you would be to not make yourself a center, so that no matter what, you always have the flexibility of pulling any kids at any time, because you never know who's gonna be ready to move to the next level, so you'll have the flexibility. You're probably gonna spend a lot of weeks and months getting kids engaged and probably introducing one center at a time until they can do well with those centers. And once everything is up and running, so that you can pull students, is when you'll start that process. But total understanding that it's gonna take time at those age levels. I don't know, do you have any support in the classroom at K1 levels, or are you the solo adult? It's usually a solo adult, so you're not missing out if you are. The only reason I ask is sometimes you can do things a little bit faster with another body in the room, but it's usually not the case. So you just take, know that it's gonna be a process of, you know what, I'm not gonna get to this piece right now. I'm gonna make sure that students have these two centers down, and then in a couple weeks, I'm gonna introduce another center. And we're gonna practice what it's like to read. You might not get a one-on-one or a small group for a little while, but that's okay, because the morning message and the centers that you do start to incorporate are already practicing these skills. They're already learning letter sounds and high frequency words from the get-go, so they're not missing out. Whereas if it was second grade or third grade or above, those kids who need the differentiated support would be missing it, and we know that they need it to catch up. So that's something to think about. Also, will help you with leveling, right? Because there are some tricks to your grade level. You can have a bunch of students sitting in a circle on the carpet and have each of them go around repeating a pattern and right away see who can repeat a pattern. So there's gonna be ways that you can quickly determine who's at least a 1 yellow and kind of go from there. All right, now I'm gonna bring some kids over and you can have them even pointing with the morning message or going up to the screen with like an ebook that you have and have them come up with a pointer, and you could do it during whole group time and just take notes on, all right, 2 yellow, he can track, so I'm gonna write that down. What you will need the one-on-one time with is just the letter names and sounds piece, but those other pieces, something that kindergarten framework is gonna ask is in the first week, figure out who your read to me's are, which means who can't finish the patterns, who can't repeat the patterns, and so that won't take you as long to do, nor do you need to do a one-on-one with it necessarily. So hopefully that's helpful, but we'll definitely be able to help you through that. And this is the learning year. Next year will be so much easier because leveling will be a thing of knowing how to level will be a thing of the past. You'll be more comfortable with school pace. All your kids come into you, except kindergarten, all of them will have a level and a history. So you'll see every power level they ever had in the last year, how long they were in each level. There's lots of graphs and charts we haven't even dug into that you'll be able to use and have a lot more information. We just gotta get through this year of like taking on all the new and giving yourself grace, because it's a lot. It's great and it's gonna do great things, but it's a lot to take on. So I get it. And I'm gonna stop talking very soon because I've talked too much, and I know that you just need some time to dig into the resources, to stretch, to do some planning. My hope is I gave you enough basics of how to attack this book so that you can think about all the information's there. So just thinking about how do I set this up, what do I want my room to look like, and if you have materials, if you decide that you wanna go look at your materials during this time and see what you have, see if you have questions around it. I think we are here, what did my agenda say? 3:30? 3? I forgot. 3. Right? Okay, you're like, I giving us a half hour longer. All right, I'm here till 3 o'clock if you have questions. What I would like to do is give you the rest of the time to do what makes the most sense to you. If that means you wanna look at something on School Pace with me or Erla, if that means you wanna plan with your group, you wanna look at your materials in your classroom. I've talked enough to you today. I appreciate your energy, and I'm really pumped to come back and support you. And I'm here, I'll take any questions too if you have any burning questions right now. And thank you for explaining from Southern.
Yeah, no, this app, basically,
Yeah.
this
So
app,
with the labels,
we see you.